Hi, friends, and welcome to All the Things TV with me, Tiffany Jo Baker, where our heart is to help you grip God's grace, use your gifts, and get your goals, even in your mess and mission. Join us now for this episode of Season 2 of the podcast, where we talk about different areas that we may be on the struggle bus, so you can struggle less and succeed more and do all the things you've been called and created to do. Good morning, y'all, and welcome back to All the Things TV. We are coming back with another episode in Season 2 where our big topic is the struggle bus. And our heart is to help you struggle less, succeed more, and take a shorter ride. And today I have with me one of my dear friends, Angie Baughman. Angie, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Such a delight. Thank you for having me, Tiffany.
Well, I've had the pleasure of being on Angie's podcast. She is an amazing woman. She's got a ministry called Steady On. She is a pastor, a podcaster, but today she is coming here to share with us about the scared to step out struggle. And as multifaceted women with a why, moms on a mission, there's different things in different seasons of our life that God calls us to do. And sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, but often they're a little scary. And there's things that can hold us back. And I know Angie is not a stranger to this, and that's why she's on here today. But if you don't know Angie, let me tell you just a little bit about her. And the way I love to do it is I love to get the loved one's point of view of how they would say Angie is. So
these questions were a little scary.
I know. I love doing this. It just gives me a little glimpse into her everyday world. So her husband would say that she's quick to get angry, but also quick to say she's sorry. Her kids would say that she always wants to talk things out, and she doesn't cook, this is why we're friends. I don't really cook either. I don't really cook either.
They're alive. They eat.
Exactly. Somehow they find a way. It's amazing. Her friends would say that she's slow to trust them, but it's worth the extra time. And she would say that she's always pushing the boundary of being overscheduled. Well, thank you so much for coming here today. I know part of your story is a story of trauma and abuse and surviving it. And through that all, overcoming by your connection to Jesus and to his word. And so we are going to talk about a little bit about when Jesus calls us to step out. And in that connection, in that relationship, sometimes he wants us to take that leap of faith. So I know you have probably different stories, different circumstances, but when there was a time in your life that God was calling you to step away, to step towards something different, what helped you in that process? What helped you to understand that God was calling you to do that? And what did that look like for you?
The most recent time when I was really aware of God calling me to something different, that really was, it was a refining. It was also a looking at maybe an idol in my life, not maybe an idol in my life, and really asking a trust issue for me, right? Because I had been very busy. My life looked like I was living into my calling. I just want to say that. I don't think anybody would have said, well, yeah, she's called to ministry. Look at all she's doing, right? Because that's what I did. But there was a time when God really opened my heart to understanding that a lot of the things that I was doing in church work, in ministry work, was really about getting affirmation from other people. I chose things for me, an administrative role, because I can do administrative stuff in my sleep, right? I'm just gifted that way. So I can lead the committees and plan the things and organize, and I can spreadsheet it, and all that kind of stuff. And I would do that. But God was calling me to teach. He was calling me to write and to teach. And I was doing some of that. And I've been a pastor a long time, but he was calling me to do it in a bigger way. And I don't mean bigger like people, but bigger like more dependent on him way, and calling me to less of the administrative stuff that really had become an idol or a crutch because of why I was doing it. And again, it didn't look like anything bad from the outside, but I knew I could do that in my own strength. And I think a calling from God, I'd be interested in your thought about that. A calling from God. I don't like to use the word always, but I'm going to say maybe always.
Yeah.
Always calls us to something that we know we cannot do in our own strength. And because of my past, I was really looking for affirmation in other people. I can show up and do this well, and you'll be pleased with me, right? And you will know that I'm okay. But the Lord was saying, I'm going to call you to something that's not that secure.
Yeah.
And I'm going to need you to grow in your willingness to be secure in me. And that was scary.
That is so scary. And I think I would say always too.
Yeah.
I think that's part of our faith journey is that him holding our hand, him carrying us, him nudging us, not by might nor by power, but by his spirit. Because when we get too comfortable, then it's too easy, then it's all about us and not about him.
Yeah. Even sometimes when it looks very much like it is about him. And I will say, even in those roles, it's just, I didn't feel shame from him. I didn't feel him saying, you're doing something bad. I didn't feel like, but there was fruit from the ministry I was doing, undoubtedly. I don't doubt that at all. But it was a time in my life where he was inviting me to grow. It was this refining, and will we trust him as the refiner? Will we trust him with the pruning, if you will? Because pruning is painful, but it ultimately, right? He says you'll bear more fruit if you do this. You'll bear more fruit. It will be richer fruit. It will be better tasting, for lack of a better way, right?
Yes.
And but it is a scary thing. It's this control. And then I'll lean in, and then I'll pull back and control, and lean in and pull back. And I think it can be a tricky, it is a tricky understanding. Yeah. To be able to listen to his voice and step out in that voice.
And so when you were in this process of listening and hearing, how does that work for you as far as how did you understand, how did you know that you were supposed to step out and to switch?
Yeah, God gave me this illustration that has become very important. I like to grasp a visual of something, right? And he often grants me with that. And so I had this image of a little carry-on suitcase, when you go fly, it's the one that will fit in the overhead bin, right? And I just had this image of me carrying this thing around all the time. And in it was my resources, my toolbox, if you will, right? And I got to take it with me everywhere I go, because then when I show up, I'll know I'll have the things I need to say or do the things I need, right? And I'm wheeling this resource around. But the thing is it's not easy to get it in the overhead bin or in the back of your car or to carry it around and all over the gravel and all these things. And he said, what would your life be like if you were willing to leave that suitcase of resources, if you will, in your closet at home? If you were willing to step out into the world and trust that whatever circumstance you came in, you didn't need that because I would give it to you. Now, you won't know ahead of time, right? Because I like to know ahead. You won't know what's in there because you won't be carrying it around all the time. But what if, right? What if you showed up in a circumstance and you could know that what you needed, you would have when you needed it? Because if you're leaning into the calling that I have on your life, I will not forget you. I will not drop you. I will not leave you there. And it was this sweet connection with the Lord as he invited me to trust. And then on the days I carried that suitcase around with me, wheeled that suitcase around, he'd be like, remember, we could leave it at home. It wasn't I'm not a one and done kind of girl most of the time. It's a lesson that takes me a little while to learn. But I will say I have, probably that's been about 4 years ago that happened in my life. And I'm very quick now to say no to administrative tasks. I very much have experienced this sweetness of experiencing what it's like to trust that he will lead you. I mean, just think you said that with my podcast, let's just use that for instance. I had no idea. No idea how to do a podcast, no idea at all. And I have kind of taught myself, but it's been this thing that as he continues to, I'm like, I don't know how to do this part. I don't know how to do this part. He brings resources, he brings people. And it is a very different situation than if I had in my suitcase, right, said, oh, I have all the tools for this. Yeah. What I'm experiencing because I'm letting him unfold that one step at a time is so much closer with him than if I just knew I did this, right? I can do it. And I did do it. That's kind of gross.
I think it's like this adventure, pre-Jesus, pre-sold out to Jesus, I was in the adventure of life. And that came with shame, guilt, torment. But the faith adventure of putting your hands and trusting a God who loves you more than the life of his son is comes with fulfillment, peace, and joy. And so, like, I love the visual when we can lay down that suitcase, put it in the closet, put it in the bin, whatever it might be, and just, hand in hand, step by step, trust him. It is kind of exciting. It's definitely not boring. It's definitely not boring. A little scary. But what I found is when we start to do that with those little nudges, we can build up that reservoir of I call it the memorial stones of God's faithfulness through the journey, like the Israelites, when they experienced God throughout their journey and erected a memorial stone because they found God in a new way. He showed himself in a new way. I find that when we have that, it helps us to take those bigger faith leaps.
I love the story of Moses's call. You said the Israelites,
Yeah.
and then I share this. In chapter 3, when God calls Moses, right, to go to, he has all these questions: Who am I? Who are you? What if they don't listen to me? I can't speak. All of this, like, this isn't in my suitcase of resources, right?
Yeah.
I don't have the skills for this.
Mm-hmm.
But then they go through all of these experiences, and when you get to chapter 33, after all of the plagues and the signs and all of the, and God says it's time to be thinking about going into the promised land, and Moses says one thing: If you're not going, don't make me go. Like, that's his, with this new call, right? That's the only thing he says: if you're not going. And God invites all of us into that progressive relationship. I think that growing, unfolding relationship where at the beginning we're all going to have those things. This is not in my suitcase of resources, right? But he's like, just take one step. And one step, and watch what I do, until you get to a point, because we can all get there, where our only question or only statement is, if you're not going, I don't want to go. If you're going, I'll go. But if you're not going, I don't want to go. And that's what I want. And I want to be so clear. For some people, they could be teaching and it might be administrative, right? That's the call. There's not like a greater, it's whatever it is that you're like, I don't have this in my suitcase. That's the scary thing. So it's not like one is greater than the other or something. It's whatever that thing is that's poking on you, that the Holy Spirit's stirring in you. And you're like, I don't think I can control that. Or I don't know if I trust that will bring me satisfaction. All those kind of questions, that's the thing, sister.
Yes. Oh, it so is. And I love what you said. Nothing is small and nothing is big in the kingdom. Like they're all different parts that we play in different seasons. Some are hands, some are feet, some are heads. And it takes all of us doing what we're called and created to do when we're supposed to do it to make it all work.
Yes.
Well, okay. As we're wrapping this up, what have you learned as you've let go, leaned into the call? What have you learned by stepping out and taking those faith leaps?
I think that I've learned the truth that in his word that talks about he wants to do more with our life than we can imagine, right? That we cannot dream up the dreams that he has for us. And again, that's not big in the secular world that we live in. You can't, we can and we do compare those things, but that's not what he's talking about. There's a sweetness. I believe in his love for me at a deeper place than I did before, because he continually shows up in my weakness. I love when Paul's like, I've asked him to take this thing away from me. And you talked about my past, like, I asked him to take that thing away from me. And he says, actually, my strength is made power. My strength is made perfect in weakness, and my grace is sufficient for you. Right. And that's one thing to read it and believe it. And it is another thing to know it, to know it in your heart. And I wouldn't trade that knowing for anything, because it's what helps me on days when I don't feel so strong. Right.
So good. And I love, we could talk all day about thorns in the flesh and that whole thing.
And I fall back into that administrative temptation. I'm like, I fall back into that. That's one of the reasons I said, my temptation is to overschedule and all that. It's not a process that I'm on the other side, but I do know now, and I do hear him much better than I used to.
Oh, I love it. That's part of the journey, right?
Yes.
As
Yes.
the journey, the faith journey, the adventure, and his faithfulness along
Yes.
the way. Well, I know there's a verse that's near and dear to you. I know lots of them are, and I love how you know, like I know verses, but I don't necessarily know where they're at. And you're like, and then in verse 33, I love it. Okay, but Psalms 42 in the NLT says, He set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along. What does that mean to you in this stepping out process?
I think steadiness, that's the ministry is steady on. And I always
Mhm.
say, it's not because I am, it's because I desire to be. And he can do that for me. He
Yeah.
does that for us. We're going to falter, right?
Mhm.
We're going to get scared. We're going to look ahead and say, that's too slippery. That's too rough.
Yeah.
That's too big, right? And we're going to even sometimes like sit down and say, it's just too much. And he
Mhm.
can provide that when things in our life get shaky, circumstances, internal, external, when it just, that's my word. When
Yes.
it gets shaky, he is the thing. He is the
Mhm.
one that can steady us and say, you know what, just
Mhm.
stand right here with me for a
Mhm.
minute. Get your feet back under you. We'll walk again when you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Ooh, I love that. And I love, again, it's that journey. It's
Yeah.
that step by
Yeah.
step. And
Mhm. Yeah.
just what a beautiful, beautiful thing to be doing this with you, Angie. And just, I love how God's connected us
Mhm.
through the power of Facebook
Yes.
and online community. And I look forward to the day when we can hug each other's
Me
necks in
too.
real life and just continue to encourage one another. And when we're scared to step out, that we
Yes.
can just be that source of encouragement for one another along the way. Well, Angie, where can people find you if they want more?
Yeah, my Facebook community is at Live Steady On. The ministry is Steady On. The website is livesteadyon.com. And the podcasts can be found pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts by searching Steady On.
And Angie is an amazing Bible teacher. Her heart is really for us to have biblical application and know how to apply the Bible simply and really, truly in our lives to help us do what we've been called and created to do. So I encourage y'all to check out Angie, and all her information will be in the show notes. Well, y'all, thank you so much for joining us here today. And I just hope that this helps you week by week to really help you fuel your soul and success as you do all the things that God has called and created you to do. And we'll see y'all next week. Be blessed. Well, friends, thank you for joining us today on All the Things TV video podcast. If you enjoyed our time together and are taking away a nugget that has inspired your soul and success, would you share this episode with a loved one who could use it too? And if you haven't already, take a moment to rate and review the podcast and help me spread soul care and dream care. Until next time, I'm Tiffany Jo Baker, a 3-time surrogate and strategizer who loves to help you birth your God-given dreams. Now go do all the things you've been called and created to do with the grace and gifts God has given you.